This is the Freeheel Life podcast, episode number 157. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a great holiday weekend and got out and did some skiing. And we're back in the shop, ready to roll, ready to get going. And I brought none other with me to kick off the week than Taylor Johnson. What's up, buddy?
What's up, Freeheel Life podcast listeners? We're back in the shop. We are here potentially in your ear on a Monday morning, potentially any other time for that matter, because you can listen to these as many times or whenever, wherever. Anyway, we're here to talk about Telemark related things, and today's hot topic, or could be controversial topic, is mounting points.
I like it. This is going to be a good one.
This one seems to get a lot of comments on Facebook posts. If you ask some Telemark skiers, where should I mount my bindings, you'll probably get 10 different opinions.
You mount it on the pin line, bro.
Just mount it on top of the ski. We'll start with that one.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing. No, but this is good because especially this time of year, people are getting a bunch of new skis. You're either buying skis for the season. Maybe you got a deal, a Black Friday deal somewhere. Christmas is coming up. This is the time of year when you've got the newest amount of equipment probably in your life. And you are probably thinking, or you've got a used pair of skis. We'll probably cover some stuff with that as well. Maybe there's a previous mount on there. But we figured like this is a good topic for this time of year is, one, where do you mount your skis? How do you mount your skis? Maybe what our methodology is of what we use to mount skis. History of mounting skis. Like I said, used skis too. What do you do if there's already holes in your skis? So I think that kind of covers it. So why don't you ready to hop into this deep, dark topic of internet hate and despise and
well, to keep it simple, I would say 98% of the skis that we mount at our shop are mounted boot center on recommendation line.
Perfect. Okay, it's end of podcast. We'll see you guys next week. No, let's break it down though, because let's talk about let's give some definitions. Boot center is what? How do we measure the boot center and go over NTN and go over 75 mil?
Depends on the boot model. Majority of NTN boots from any of the three manufacturers, there is a center line on the boot. You could also make your own center line by taking a tape measure, measuring from toe to heel, dividing by 2, and marking the halfway point. So that establishes the center running length of your boot, basically. Where's the middle of your foot? Now, 75 millimeter, we measure sans duckbill, basically. We measure from the middle of the pins or the pin line to back of heel, divide by 2. Basically, getting the middle of the innards of the boot, I guess, where your foot actually is. We're trying to get these boot center references to your feet, not so much, now it's like if you did, measure the entire length of a 75 millimeter, like you're not going to be that far off, but you're not going to be perfect the way we think of it. You'd be about, you'd probably be, what would be the math? If the pin line is 14 mil back, divide by 2, you're going to be off by 7 mil. How we would measure it, if I'm thinking about that right.
Yeah, and we've always done that. We've always gone center of pin lines. I don't remember why we established that, honestly, in the first. I feel like that was a standard that
depends on, I guess it depends on the jigs too, of like when you're actually on the tech bench. Some of the jigs, like the Volley jig or the Black Diamond jig, they have a reference point that is using pin line and back of heel.
Yep.
Instead of midpoint, but like essentially pin line and back of heel. In between there is your boot center.
Yep. But that's how we always do it. We always mark the pin line on the... Oh, that's probably why we do it, honestly, now that you're saying that. It's funny to think back that far. Jeez. But we've always stayed consistent with that. We'll mark... if on a lot of the old 75 millimeter boots, Scarpa especially, there is a pin line on the Vibram that you can transfer to the side of the toe, so you can visualize it a little bit better. The midpoint you then need to measure and mark, and then your heel. So, and then marking on NTN boots. I was gonna say if you really want your weird.
Don't ask us why the 27.5 and 28 shell size, the 316 millimeter sole length from Scarpa does not have a midline point on that boot mold.
That's so
every other shell size 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 29, 30 all have it. I don't know why the 27.5, 28
That's
shell
so
doesn't,
funny.
but
you knew exactly where I was going with that.
Yeah, for sure. It's just weird. Every other boot size has that mark on it for us. So
that's so funny. Yeah, you'll notice that there's like a little kind of extra little piece of plastic kind of notch thing.
Yeah, it's just like it would be engraved into the mold that they inject the plastic into, so it kind of creates a little like a raised line.
Here's your little hot tip. What we use when we're marking that. So if you're at home or you're in a Telemark geared desert, or you don't trust your local tech, we'll just give you a couple hot tips along the way. So marking your boot, the best thing that we've used is a fine tip dry erase marker. They work great. You can get them in multiple colors, whatever you like, and you can make a mark and easily wipe it off with your finger with a little bit of alcohol or spit or whatever you want.
Yeah,
I had to throw the spit in there.
Gets the job
on my
done
finger
sometimes, but yeah. So basically, that's our take is boot center on recommended line. Okay, so we've established where boot center is. How do I establish where recommended line is? Well, that is all to do with the ski. And a lot of people on Facebook would say, yeah, but that line is based on alpine skiers. Me. Well, yeah, ish, kind of. I think my personal theory, and I'll let you sort of respond to this if you differ at all, but I would venture to say we're pretty close on the same page here, is, okay, I'm in a Telemark stance. I'm in a lunge. There's a lot more of my body on the tip of the drop knee ski, but I'm very centered as far as my balance and, a good Telemark position with a slightly upright chest compared to an alpine skier that's really getting over the tips of their skis. Like Tele positions a little more upright. My glutes and of my non-drop knee ski are kind of weighted over the tail of the ski. So in my head, as we're trying to create almost one long side cut in a Telemark turn, as I'm stretching out, that like sort of where my centered weight is tip on one ski, and although I don't want to be back seat on the other leg, I kind of see it as I'm tip on one ski, tail on the non-drop knee ski. And it's not like I'm like leaning back and riding on that tail, but just sort of like where my weight is, and then I'm going back and forth. And although I love making a tele turn, I'd be lying if I said I made a Telemark turn every single turn throughout the winter. I think that's sort of my theory of, I don't really see why I would mount back for tele, which is a sort of common theme you see sometimes, because it's like I'm not like leaning forward where both heels are up and I'm over the front of both skis. I'm very centered on one ski and over the tip on the other ski. Is that maybe without the video element to this podcast yet? I mean, I think I agree. Overall, like, I agree with everything that you're saying. And I think there's,
I mean, even since you started here in 2015, I mean, I think what we've learned in the 7 full years of doing the shop is we have traditionally always gone off the recommended line for the ski manufacturer, and not always, because again, actually, before I go with this thought process, yes, I agree. I don't even get as scientific, I think, as you do. I mean, basically, like, I want to be where the ski is on my downhill ski, kind of like what you were saying. I don't think you're saying ride the tail. I mean, you're actually riding the full ski on the front ski, and you're engaging the camber the way that it was made, you know, just like an alpine turn, essentially. The weighting's different, but essentially you're still engaging your downhill ski in a very similar fashion.
Yeah, but like almost like by like splitting our feet in a telly stance, it's like forward and backwards.
Well, and this is the short of my argument with not mounting back is I 100% don't think that you want on the uphill ski. I don't want more tip because it's harder to engage the tip and the side cut of the tip as easily when I have a ton more tip to deal with. So you start mounting way back, I feel like you, in most cases, you just get this floppy tip kind of sliding around. So,
yeah, and I would also say then that sort of depends on the ski a little bit, and also personal preference. Like if you just say, you know what, like screw you guys, I've mounted my stuff -2 centimeters from the end of time. Like that's cool. Like we can drill them -2 because the reality is I am of the opinion that skis have a recommended mounting point, you know, that's either marked on the top sheet or a measurement from the manufacturer or, you know, some sort of raised like edge in the cassette of the ski press. Like there's something that's going to identify like this is the line, which is maybe, you know, 1 millimeter wide or something for a reference for a ski tech and a jig and everything. I would say the reality is a sweet spot on a ski is probably 3 to 5 centimeters, where if it's in that realm, it's acceptable. And maybe there's personal preferences, like, you know, other brands of that come off the top of my head of like Atomic and Vocal, and DPS used to, but I don't think their newest stuff does. They'd give you at minimum 3 recommended lines. Like Moment puts 5 recommended lines. That's basically, here's our rec line, here's +1, +2, -1, -2, somewhere in this zone. And I think that like when we were sort of finalizing our recommended point on the protector, it was a combination of math to tell us where the side cut is, where the center of the ski is, and also a little bit of feel of, you know, I think within 1 centimeter here and there, or forward and back, within like 2-3 turns, I am like subconsciously making the adjustment of, oh, this ski just wants me to get over the tip a little more or be more centered on the ski. Like, you know, it's almost like, I mean, you're going to get that feedback within a couple of turns. And I'm of the opinion that if it's 1 centimeter forward or back, like, number one, like if I just handed you a pair of skis and said, go ski these, tell me what you think, and they were, you know, mounted on the rec line, and then I gave you the next pair of skis and they were -1, and the next pair of skis they were minus or +1, like if I told you, you might be able to tell me, but if I didn't tell you, you might just go ski them and be like, like either you'd make that adjustment without thinking about it, or you wouldn't even notice.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and I think one thing that you're bringing up that's good with each ski manufacturer does the recommended line a little bit differently, and then the options forward or back from that line can be different as well. And so what I wanted to mention too is a lot of this -2 centimeter thing that comes up these days, especially because 22 Designs bindings are probably the number one, at least in the US market, that people are getting on. In the instructions, I don't believe it's changed. I could be wrong, but I think it still has that -2.
They updated that.
They did?
Like 2 years ago, but it was like still a bunch of old posters floating around. It says they recommend mounting on ski recommended.
Oh, sweet. Okay. So I'm outdated. Sorry, 22 Designs. But that was for a long time. You'd hear that as kind of this, the binding manufacturer saying go to back, but it didn't have any reference to which ski they're discussing. And so that was always like, if you're just I think what we're doing is we're generalizing here and just saying, if you're not sure it's a brand new ski or you don't really care, I would say for most customers, we're going to recommend boot centerline on the ski recommended line.
And those, like, I would also add too with those recommended lines is that's based on the ski, camber, side cut, running length, like where is the sweet spot on that ski? Because I think Miles did a YouTube video, I think last year, about this, discussing these recommended mount points. And just for reference and kind of skis that we carry in the shop, let's talk about the Volet Manti and the Volet Supercharger, which are both about 105 underfoot. They are both also offered in a 171 length, so we can have a sort of exact comparison. Now, Volet does not mark their top sheets with a mount point because top sheets can move around a little bit and it's less reliable. They just give us a chart that says measure in a straight line with a tape measure on the tip all the way back. So not following like the contour of the ski, of just tape measure straight from tip to mount point. The 171 Manti recommended mounting point is 90.8 centimeters from the tip. The 171 Supercharger is 95.4 centimeters from the tip. So these are the same width ski, the same length ski, and the recommended mounting point is almost 5 centimeters different, 4.6 or 4, we'll just say about 5. I don't know, but on the fly math is not happening right now. So like we might ask ourselves why. Like it's the same length ski, it's the same width ski. Why is the mount point 5 centimeters
totally different dynamic of ski.
Totally different style of ski. Like if we have those skis in front of you, like if you look at the camber profile, maybe similar tip shape. The camber is longer on the Supercharger, extending a lot further into the tail with a flatter tailed ski. The Manti, the camber profile is, the camber pocket between first contact point after the tip rise and first contact point before the tail rise is shorter. Where the side cut on the ski is, it's more centered based on that tip shape. So like, they recommend a 5 centimeter difference in mount point, which is significant. Like you'll totally feel 5 centimeters. Like if I mounted you 5 back, 5 forward of the rec line, you'll notice that. Now, also, like, me and the Manti don't get along as well as me and the Supercharger. That's personal preference of, I like a, more directional ski. I like a flatter, stiffer tail. I don't really love the, like,
Manti's
quick,
washy,
surfy, washy, maneuvery. Like, we sell, like, Supercharger and Manti are, like, number 2 and number 3 of what we sell from Volet. So it's not like everyone that loves the Manti is wrong, and it's not like everyone that loves the Supercharger is wrong. It's just we have to understand these are different skis, different camber profiles, different side cuts, different mounting points, so that when you're, if you mount a Manti where the Supercharger rec line is, like, you're literally going to have zero tail. You're just going to basically have tail rocker behind you, and you're just going to wheelie out of everything. And if we mount that Supercharger where the Manti mount point is, you're going to be so far over the front of that ski and in front of that side cut that you're almost going to have to like ski it back seat to engage the ski properly.
Yeah, I think that's I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a perfect comparison. We can put that in the show notes too as a link to the YouTube channel, or just go to the Freeheel Life YouTube and dig that one up. I think that's a perfect example, is like the skis have been tested by the manufacturer for the best way that they should be skied on, and I think you should trust those because they put the R&D time into it and they're doing it. That's actually a good example too, because I've said, funny enough, I like the Manti, but exactly for the reasons you're saying. It's a fun ski if you're using it for the type of skiing that it's made for. But I traditionally like the Ultra Vector and the Supercharger, which are built similarly because it's got that, it's super Telite style. It's just like ability to carve, but it's like when you hit crud, you can go through crud. And I feel like Manti is not as fun that way, personally speaking. Like, I'm not looking at it like, oh, I'm just going to charge through a bunch of junk on the mountain. It's like, I'm looking for little surfy pockets, and it's washy. Like, that's the best way I can describe a ski like that. And you're correct. If you mount it too far back, it kind of almost gives you a disadvantage with the tail profile. Like, you're not being able to use that washiness because you're literally going to be too far back on the mount point. Yeah, that's a good example. So I think trust the mount point. The only other thing I was going to bring up is like boot recommended center. This is totally Madsen preference with a customer. I don't know if you do this. If someone's like a 29 or like a 30 Mondo, and if I put that boot rec line on a ski just visually, that is another time where I may bump people back a couple centimeters just because the boot takes up so, if you get a dude that's like 6'5" and he's got like this massive boot, sometimes I'll say, hey, we could bump you back a little bit just to make sure the boot's not taking up more tip. But that's not like doctrine. That's something I've done in the past. It's something you could consider because most dudes aren't skiing 195s anymore. It might be like the ski.
Well, it's also like they might not offer even that.
That's
like,
what I'm saying.
It's like the longest protector we make is a 184. Even though like when I ski a 184 compared to like if you're 6'5" skiing a 184, like it's the longest ski we offer. But really, like we should build you a 194 because that's probably the equivalent of like effective length for someone my weight and size on a 184. Like it's just, there's few and far between manufacturers that make like a, modern free ride all mountain type ski in that 95 length. But
there's basically the point of bringing that up is, again, these are generalizations. These are not specifications. You need to do what works best for you. But for the average person that comes in, and I know all the nerds out there are sitting here like, how could you not know where you're going to mount your skis, dude? Like, seriously? Like, you just walk in and you ask them to give the I mean, most people do. Most people are like, what do you guys think? And we're like, I'd probably go boot recommended on recommended line. All right, sounds good. I mean, literally, that's like the majority of people. And guess what? The majority of people are pretty happy, Totally. And I think that's, for like just a modern shaped ski. Now, I think on the topic of mounting, if we want to shift gears, because I think we sort of beat the boot center on recommended line. We did good. Do
you want to go historical or remount first?
I think remount's more valuable.
Okay.
And then I think we do get into the history for the people that don't know that stuff. But let's talk remounts. Take us there.
So remounts, fairly common of you got a pair of skis, maybe you got them from your friend, you bought them from a used gear shop, you are pulling your Alpine bindings off and committing to Tele. Congratulations. Hole patterns are very different. There's a variety of hole patterns that some get along, some don't get along, some can basically, you can almost use the same boot center, but the holes are different because the pattern's different, or the shape of the binding, or the boot length, the boot sole length is different. You don't always have the option to mount on recommended because of a previous mount, or someone was a different boot size than you, something like that. General rule of thumb is we want a minimum of 1 centimeter between holes for safety, of basically assuming there's no water damage. We want to drill into fresh wood and give space of solid core and core material that the screw can drill into and pull on, and especially with the nature of the pulling nails effect of tele bindings, like it's important to find a safe spot to mount your stuff. To be honest, on remounts, if things get a little suspect on the heel pad, we might let less than 1 centimeter of clearance fly on a heel pad, just because it's not taking any force. I mean, as long as there's enough torque on the screw to hold the heel plate down, you'd probably be okay. Like, it's not really a safety concern if, the holes were too close on a heel pad. But front holes on the binding, whether that's a 4-hole, a 6-hole pattern, whatever that may be, like, we want plenty of clearance. So you might drop your ski off at our shop, and sometimes we have a moment to sort of do a preliminary lineup before the tech actually has a drill in his hand to say, it looks like we could go back, or it looks like we could go forward. What are the pros and cons of if I have to? My existing mount is in the way. I cannot go on recommended. I have to go 1 centimeter forward or 1 centimeter back. If you want to make that decision, here's the reality of it. 1 centimeter forward is just going to let you sort of engage that side cut a little bit quicker. 1 centimeter back is going to be a little slower to engage that side cut, but provide you with, a little more float and soft snow. And again, the differences between +1, -1 or recommended, it's pretty subtle. We're going to make that call probably, or make it a recommendation for you of, if you have a twin tip type free ride ski and we need to remount, I mean, maybe going +1 is totally fine, because like the recommended line is, like on a lot of twin tip free ride style skis, like that Manti again, quick math, 171 divided by 2 is 85.5. So the 90.8 centimeter rec line is essentially -5 from true center, which in that case, maybe you could go either or on the supercharger. Same length, 171, 95.4. It's about 10 back. That's a very directional mount point. So we might go, we might make that decision with you based on the type of ski, but those are really the real differences, is slightly quicker to engage the tip and engage the side cut of the ski, or slightly more float. I mean, that's about it. I don't think there's, sometimes you might just be remounting a ski and it's like your only option is -3. It's gonna be back. Do you want to go for it or not? And that's a decision you might have to go for. Again, depends on the bindings. The one that we see in the shop that's probably the most annoying is if you're coming from Rodafella Freedom or Freeride with the newest mounting pattern, which would be the pink plastic mounting plates on the Freerides, and you want to buy an Outlaw because that's kind of the latest and greatest of the NTN toe cage style bindings. Those mount points do not get along at all. Sorry. Not my fault, not my design, but we have to shift. We literally have to shift 3 centimeters one way or the other. Yeah, in most cases.
They're close, but not the same at all. I was going to say too, is even one that shares, and this is something to keep in mind too, if you're coming from a Bishop BMF, which does use the 22 exact pattern, it still isn't the same.
The boot center, the boot center is
off.
So it's almost off enough that you could shift just a whole pattern, maybe install quiver killers or binding inserts or something in there to sort of give you the option. I've seen people do that, but yeah, remounts, like, sometimes it's just, this is your option within some realm of close to the recommended line. We'll usually call you and just get the confirmation that, yes, you want us to go for that. Sometimes the answer might be, all right, well, I got those skis out of a dumpster. I'll go find something else. Like, don't worry about it if I can't get them close. Like, I mean, it depends, but those are kind of our options. I would say, yeah, try to give yourself about a centimeter worth of clearance, assuming there's no water damage, just for a safety standpoint. There does get a point where the skis have had so many holes in them that either you're just out of options, or you might start getting into structural integrity of a ski. Like, if you just have a bunch of plastic plugs and glue instead of wood and fiberglass and carbon fiber, and like there comes a point where maybe that pair of skis had just seen its day. But for the most part, alpine bindings, if you're freeing your heel for the first time and you're pulling your old alpine bindings off, tele patterns are compatible enough to get you in the realm. Anything else on remounts?
No, I think that's solid. So, yeah, remounts, I think that covers the majority of it. I think what we want to wrap up on is sort of historical mounting. I feel like every year that goes by, this becomes less and less relevant, but it's always good to bring up because it still happens. I don't know when the last time you saw one of these is, but so basically here, the history of Telemark mounting really starts, back, in the late 70s, early 80s. We mounted with the phrase pins on cord. So what that means is pin line on cord center. Cord center essentially is if you took a piece of cord, pulled it from the tip to the tail on an old ski, or any ski for that matter, and then you had, let's say that cord was 171, and we divide that in half. That's your what Taylor was calling true center or cord center. So cord center, true center, two different eras, same thing. So, but what we would do back in the day with old skis, and we're talking like, think 1980s, even into the early 1990s, you had the Telemark skis that were made. A lot of them were even double camber in the 80s, and you would put your pin line, which we discussed earlier in the podcast, where it's like the line, if you drew a line across your pinholes on your boot, that's your pin line, and they would put it on true center of the ski, or cord center, so pins on cord. The problem is if you do that on a modern day ski, like a Manti, if you took, let's say you had a 75 millimeter boot, you're going to put a switchback on your Manti, and you put your pin line of your boot on that midpoint, you're going to be so far back on the ski that you're probably, you're going to look like you have clown shoes on. That's basically what it's going to look like.
Unfortunately, it's less and less, but especially like in the early years of the shop, we were fixing a lot of modern skis mounted with like a foot of tail because they were a modern ski. It was pins on the recommended line, which is way off. Like just to throw out, like on our protectors, we should line it up just out of experimental purposes, because
I know, we're throwing numbers around.
Because our recommended line is roughly, depending on your boot size, it's roughly the center of your boot on the center of the side cut, and the ball of your foot on the center of the ski, which is actually like that could be like close, but I think the error people make is they mount pins on recommended, which is not pins on cord. I think that's the bigger issue.
Yeah, that's.
I still would probably not recommend mounting a modern ski with early tip and tail rise on. Like, don't worry about the pin line or the cord center line.
This is actually a good YouTube video. We should. So hot tip on this, what we're trying to get at, if you live in a zone that does not have a proficient modern Telemark technician to mount your skis. Here's your hot tip. Never, ever walk into an establishment and just say, I want a Telemark mount. That is the no-no.
Yeah, honestly, if you live in a Telemark desert and you just go to a shop that either doesn't carry it or they're willing to do your mount, whether it's a paper jig or they have a dusty old jig, give them all your information and do your homework beforehand. Like, walk through what we're talking about here of mark your boot center, find your recommended line. You know what else you can do? Is you can clip your boot into your binding, match up that about on that line. You can even use the binding as like a little template to like, I need my front holes about right here. That should line up. Like, you know, tell them I wear a, 260 TX Pro. That's a 299 boot sole length. Like, give them so much information that if they screw it up, it's totally their fault because you did your homework in the first place.
Yeah. And using the modern verbiage that we're giving you, boot center on the ski recommended line for boot center, using that rather than just don't try to avoid saying or accepting the verbiage of a Telemark mount. And the reason being is if for some weird reason in 2022-23 season, you take in a Telemark setup to a shop that maybe, like Tay said, they might be using a paper jig or maybe they got a dusty jig. If they got a jig, that's great. But sometimes there's this residual understanding that a Telemark mount is something to do with this old school pin line that we're talking about. That's what we're trying to help you avoid and just give you a little bit of the history. So as long as you stay with, hey, Taylor brought up some good ideas where you put the mark, I want my boot center on this recommended line, et cetera, just avoid the whole Telemark mount verbiage, whatever, just so you don't end up with some funky, crazy thing. We might actually should. I don't even know what I'm saying. we should do a YouTube video. We should find a pair of skis and do like a pins on cord mount and just let her rip. Show people what it's like.
Yeah, we should. Well, now that it's kind of ski season, finally, we got some more time to get on the mountain and do some ski related YouTube content. So I'm sure you're still seeing stuff from us in the store and in the tech shop and all that stuff, but it's exciting to get onto the mountain, and Josh and I like making videos, so keep an eye on that YouTube stuff. Anything else for mounting?
No, I think we're good. Yeah, you want to lead us out and then I'll sign us off?
Yeah, well, Instagram @TellyTay. Hit that follow button.
Exactly.
Freeheel Life YouTube, all that good stuff. Freeheellife.com. Give us a call if you got any questions, comments, concerns about what gear you're on this year, if you need to upgrade something, if you have comments and suggestions, podcast@freeheellife.com for the email stuff. And other than that, I think, spread Telemark always, and I'll be back at some point.
You'll be back sooner than later. Thanks for the sweet podcast. Hopefully you get your skis mounted correctly. Like always, if you got the time, you can mail stuff to us. Literally mail your skis here and we'll mount them up with our proficient ski techs. But if you like
certified
Telemark ski techs. Thank you very much. That is,
they are proficient, but they are certified by our training processes, which basically means you go through a lot of training and you don't get to touch a customer's ski until Josh or I give you the blessing.
I love that. Thank you for doing that. We are proficient, but we are certified.
Yes.
But yeah, and if you need anything, hit us up. If you live out in the Telemark desert, as we call it, and we'll help you out. So until next week, we'll see you later. Hope you're getting some turns in. Spread Telemark always.